Awesome.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Josh.
Bring us down, Josh.
Okay, so I'm Josh Rubin. I was initially going to talk at lunch, but I moved some things around to make room for some of what happened, some of the other people that had to adjust their schedules, which meant around 3 a.m. I got up and started trying to take my hour-long deck and short it to half an hour, and also had the job of closing, which Regina put this whole thing together. I want to make sure that I'm going to try to give her the last word if a YouTube video works of her, and want to make sure this closes out on the right note. So my theme is, I've spoken to a lot of you about the learning health system. My theme today is really learning health system or bust. We have two choices. We either work together and democratize health, or healthcare becomes too big and too fragmented to heal. So that's I got to begin on the note of thanking Regina Holiday. Regina. Healthcare's Rosa Parks, and there are, I lost my clicker. I mean, there are just so many amazing things that can be said about this conference that she put together, but just to go through a few even seeing today. One is the connections that get made, and we saw this today. And the graphic artist who came here by circumstance made a connection today. Emily. And we saw the seeds that get planted. We saw the patient, it's no longer the Patient Voice Institute, the Patient Viewpoint Institute, I guess it's now called. So the Patient Viewpoint Institute, which was the result of seeds that got planted at the first cinder block. So, I mean, a lot of us have been to conferences, like I said, conferences where people sell things, conferences where we get a lot of good speeches and we learn a lot, where we network. Some conferences, like ones I've tried to put together, where you have a goal or deliverable at the end, but there's really nothing else like a cinder block, and that's really all from Regina and her personality and the people she brings together. So she really brings the best. I am so thrilled that two of the silver cinder blocks that are here are from my main employer, University of Michigan, the Department of Learning Health Science, which is the department that Chuck Friedman and I and others really built around this idea of a learning health system as a science, and the journal, which is the journal called Learning Health Systems, published by the University of Michigan and John Wiley, and since it's an open access, peer-reviewed scientific journal, we started all about this topic. So this is, these two silver cinder blocks have more than paid for everyone's lunches here. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So there's going to be an ask where the whole theme is sharing stories. We're launching this new journal. I would like patient empowerment to be a huge theme of it. It is a big part of the LHS. So I'm going to ask, we're still figuring out how to do this, but I would like stories shared. I like you folks to contribute to the journal in some ways, and whatever's useful to you and useful to the journal. So that's the ask. I'm going to sort of pass around cards about it and a sign-up sheet to get information about people who might be interested in contributing to the journal. I'll tell you a little more about it, but it's an international journal, has an editorial board, 46 people spanning 9 countries of some of the leading scientists, and we're really just getting started, but I want patient engagement to be a huge part of it. The people there they're excited, and this is the group to try to do that. So the other reason I'm really excited about just doing anything to support this amazing group of people. I travel a lot these days. I go to a lot of conferences, I talk at a lot of conferences. This is the most important thing I do all year, is coming here. And this is the only place I think I go to where everyone is a hero. I mean, everyone here just so...
you.
I don't know. Everyone here has been through, or so many people here have been through hell and back, I hate to say it, and handle it so bravely and so powerfully. And as soon as you start to get back on your feet, all anyone here wants to do is figure out what they can do to help everybody else. It's not oh, poor me, poor this. What can I do to help everybody else? And that's why everyone here is a hero. One more silver cinder block I'm thrilled about is the Cantor Family Foundation, where I was the full-time executive director for like 3.5 years, and now I'm still work 20% for Joe, and I'm vice president of the board, and I'm just thrilled. This is the foundation started entirely about the learning health system, and I'm thrilled about patient empowerment by a frustrated patient, by a gentleman I sometimes refer to, he's 92 years old, I sometimes call him E-Patient Zero, because he was 20 years ago, he was asking the kinds of questions that we're asking here, and I'm sorry there still aren't great answers to some of them, but so anyway, I'm thrilled about that. And also thrilled, Lily has been such an absolute huge supporter of the learning health community, the learning health system movement, and I'm just thrilled Lily is doing everything they're doing here. I think I sort of went through my required disclosures that my main job is I'm program officer for learning health system initiatives at University of Michigan, which is a department, the first of its kind in the world, that thinks of this problem as a science. I'm part of the learning health community, which sees realizing this vision as a grassroots movement anchored in a set of core values. and I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors of the Cantor Family Foundation that sees this as a mix of a public education project, an outreach, a policy project, and a construction project, which is what Joe did for a living for a long time. There's also a disclaimer, like Mark did earlier today and others, that there are going to be things I say here, especially since I don't think I'm being recorded, that I am on vacation for. And you know what? I mean, after hearing what people had to say today, this is just my own opinion. I think at our very worst, I mean, the challenges that we're dealing with is a health system that treats the data and the human experience that is so vital to this, the information sharing that we're all talking about, at its worst treats that with the contempt for natural resources in the environment that a polluter does, treats the decisions that have to come out of that affect how $3 trillion is spent, $10,000 for every person in this country is spent, treats that with contempt and crassness beyond what I've seen of The Big Short or any of these Wall Street movies about the subprime. This is worse, at its very worst. It's not that there aren't great examples. And I just think that, and worst of all, treats the people the way Rosa Parks was treated many, many years ago that's now unimaginable. And I think the folks who can change that are us. So I think that that's the worst. There's other great examples of the best, but we got to make sure that the really good things that are moving forward outpace the bad stuff. Otherwise, we have a time bomb on our hands. So that's our job also. We have a lot of jobs. I wanted to acknowledge 3 people who, whether they knew it or not, contributed material to this. Chuck Freeman, who is my boss and my sort of partner in crime on a lot of this learning health system work. David Brailer, who's really thought a lot about patient ownership of data. He was the very first national coordinator. And Casey, your Facebook page has just so much great content that there are many headlines in this if I have the time that came right out of things I read because of your Facebook page. So this is the most important event that I go to, and I went to the first one in Kansas City entirely on my own dime. I've tried to never miss a day. The only thing I did miss yesterday, it's the first Cinderblocks thing I've ever missed, but it was for a good reason. It was for a family event. So my father, who has been an environmental activist for over 40 years, was honored Wednesday night. You'll see with a few other people whose names you might recognize: Leonardo DiCaprio, Ralph Lauren, Robert De Niro, and this guy who grew up in the housing projects in the Bronx, who became an oceanographer. And what's really interesting is it's 40 years ago, we moved to a small town, I think about 4,000 people, so I guess 5 times the size of Grantsville, really small town. I don't think it still, to this day, doesn't have a traffic light in it. And the town was built around a lot of swamps and wetlands. And my dad realized, you know what, ecologically, these wetlands, they might not be sexy, they might not be as cute as a little spotted owl to preserve, but they're really important to preserve. And he fought for many decades to make sure these wetlands got preserved, these swamps, and fought against developers that wanted to build big mansions, things like that. And what makes that interesting, the parallel I see with this is, yeah, he was crazy 40 years ago talking about you got to preserve swamps, you got to stop development for swamps, where's the swamp stuff, who cares? And I sort of see a parallel with what we're doing now. We're at the start of a movement like the environmental movement, where many decades ago it might not have made sense, and now everyone gets it. I think I think what we're talking about, patients need their data. What are you talking about? No, I think it's really getting there. So, ending with this analogy of, I think data, human experience captured, human health information captured, is as important as water. Casey made this meme after a conversation we had about it.
That?
And Casey made it. I got your face right there. So
No, but it was like,
You and I had this conversation, and you made this beautiful meme, and I put it all over the place. And Dave, of course, the spigot. But I think, like water, it has to go where it has to flow where it needs to flow. We can't just let it. It has to be maintained. Has to be viewed as something that's essentially human life. The data in our health record will save our lives and will save other people's lives, and we got to treat it that way. And I think, just like sending bottles of water to the people in Flint forever is not going to solve the problem, you got to think of this as an infrastructure challenge. This has to be part of the system, and there has to be a political economy that actually supports this. That's the LHS challenge. Other big challenge, and I think everyone in this room can relate. This is David and Goliath, and I think everyone here has got to think about, when in your life, I'm sure for most people here it's a health issue, but there are other examples too. Have you been up against something that really feels much, much bigger than yourself? And to me, a powerful organization that's up against you, a political system that seems rigged, or cancer, all sort of fall in the same category. They're much bigger than you, they're scary as hell, and they don't fight fair, and the system that you're fighting in makes even less sense than the thing you're trying to fight. And how do you tackle a Goliath? And one way I explain with the learning health system is I then turn to Joe Cantor, who's now 92 years old. That's his spouse Nancy of well over 60 years. They've been married, and anyway, he in his lifetime, I mean, he in some ways developed some of this initial idea for the LHS, but he in his lifetime, I've noticed, has taken on a lot of things bigger than himself, and he's always done it the same way. So he fought in World War II, and actually was knighted about 2 years ago. So he's now Sir Joe Cantor. He was knighted for his amazing ways of gathering intelligence from people who had been on the battlefield and knew the battlefield better than he did. And he took on a lot of established players in the big construction industry and banking and in filmmaking, starting with nothing. And did that again by finding what he calls overthinking, finding the smartest people who'd been on those battlefields and learn from them. And wanted to do the same damn thing when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in the 90s. He wanted to take the data from everyone who'd been through that battle and learn from it, and was told healthcare doesn't work that way. And is still to this day can't believe it. So that's what he set out to change. Getting to some positives, some real positive examples of where it can go when it does work that way. Carolyn Clancy, who was the head of ARC for many, many years and now does quality work at the VA, used to talk about the Starbucks analogy that, well, in Starbucks, when I guess patients with customers included, you go to Starbucks, you order your drink. The person taking the order reads it back, says it back to you. Then they say it to the person who's going to make the drink, and that person says it back to you, and you know what? You get the right drink. Healthcare leaves the patient out of the loop. You don't always get the right treatment. So
you get a receipt.
And you know what it's going to cost ahead of time.
Right, yeah.
And you know what it's going to cost after you bought it. You know, with someone else today talked about Apple, Research Kit, Care Kit, Health Kit, but I just think, I mean, the basics is getting data. There's a 62-year-old man, not a doctor, not a researcher, wears an Apple Watch, and his pulse is going up and up, and the watch has all his past data and tells him, you know, it's beyond, your pulse right now is beyond what it was when you usually exercise. Something's up. He goes to the doctor, finds out he's having a heart attack, and he's alive because his data got to him in real time when it was needed, in a form it could be used, and with what he needed to understand it and do something about it. Yet this is the exception, not the rule. I think a lot of you know the story of Stephen Keating, who's this MIT doctoral student who volunteered for this brain study and just almost by happen chance got all the data from it, because Beth Israel was really good about that. This is John Halamka, who himself has been through a big data thing, saving his own wife's life with her cancer and personalized medicine, got all this data, did his own analysis of it, and was able to find the pattern that pointed to a huge golf ball-sized brain tumor. And then using that data, he and his colleagues in his classes with him used their 3D printers and all this stuff and made models of his brain and worked as a team with the doctors, not against them, but all together using all this stuff to better treat him. I love, the thing I love about e-patient Dave's story, we always talk about data. In Michigan, we have a slide we use at Michigan and we show, okay, big data to knowledge, then what? You put it in a journal where it sits for 17 years, or you do something with it? Michigan is obsessed with how do we do something with it now, and how do we make it actionable now? Dave's story is all about that. It's about, you know, he's famous for giving my damn data, but he's alive because people shared their knowledge. People shared what they knew, their experience and their knowledge, and he got that knowledge and learned about a life-saving treatment that wasn't out there in journal, wasn't out there anywhere else. It was out there on ACOR, on a cancer patients support group, and that's how he learned what he needed. So I think I'm just going to go through there are other examples. I'm just trying to keep track of time. 13-year-old girl comes into the emergency pediatric area at Stanford Children's Hospital, Patrick Children's Hospital, has lupus, has other comorbidities, and they don't have any real, there's no clinical study anyway on how to properly treat a child with lupus and with comorbidities, and whether to give and what amount of anticoagulants to give. And you have to be very specific. If you give the wrong dose, you're going to kill them. You don't do it and it's needed, they'll die anyway. They just crunched, they took their database, they crunched all their numbers, and almost in real time figured out what the right answer was, gave her anticoagulant, she's alive today. There's a whole bunch of networks like this that are taking patients' data, trying to learn from it, and they're springing up all over the country. A lot of CoreNet-funded, Precision Medicine, ASCO's Cancer Link. There's a whole bunch. There are individual systems that are doing this. And I think the goal is really threefold. One is about bringing empathy to healthcare. That word empathy has been thrown around a lot today. What I think of as maybe one of the ultimate forms of empathy is the data flows where it needs to. So the care team and the patient and the caregivers all know about the patient that's actually seeing. The data, the right data is there at the right time in a way that's usable. The patient and everyone knows the data. And you want to even be more empathic, you know about a bunch of people like this patient that have been through the same thing before. So you really know what the experience is going to be like. And it's everyone. It's the patient, the doctors, the nurses, the caregivers. The whole team knows what they need to know. I think it's also about learning, which is the concept of a learning organization from the 1990s. Healthcare can be slow to pick up on this stuff. And it's about empowerment. And the definition of empowerment I really like the most is the definition that e-patient Dave picked up from the World Bank. Increasing the capacity of individuals and groups to make choices about what they want and transform those choices into desired actions and outcomes. I think, that every decision made is based on sort of knowing what works best for that person. That to me is one other way of thinking about a learning health system. It's a system of health learners across the nation where, as I said, every single human experience is captured and really treasured as this force for life and force for saving lives and shared in ways that we can learn from it. And then the knowledge generated informs every decision in a personalized, tailored kind of way, and every person is really empowered. That to me is what a learning health, I'll get to the IOM definition later, but that to me is what a learning health system is all about. Taking sort of a checklist view of it, this is one of Chuck Friedman's visions, it's that every consenting patient's characteristics experience are in principle available to be studied. The knowledge that's generated is available immediately to support best decisions. It's not going to sit in a journal for 17 years. Improvement is continuous. The learning happens routinely, economically, almost invisibly, and this is the culture, and it's the infrastructure, and we almost take it for granted. And maybe one day, like our grandchildren or great-grandchildren are just going to say, wait a second, you guys made these health decisions in the dark? What? You took your record around in binders even when everything else was on your iPhone? I mean, give me a break.
Binders full of records.
So there's been about 18 IOM reports on this since 2007. They've really been, among the thought leaders. I'm going to just try to speed through some things. The definition that they use is about really science, informatics, and care culture aligning so that new knowledge is generated as a byproduct of care. And they have a table of characteristics, and one of them is engaged, empowered patients, and that is absolutely critical. Question I have is I'm trying to imagine this future, and in the year 2020, which is not that far away, next time we're going through a presidential election, if we go through one, hopefully. Next time we go through a presidential election, we're going to have 50 times as much data as we do today because of the Internet of Things. Everyone's going to have smartwatches and devices and all that. And knowledge that 50 years ago doubled every 50 years is going to double every 73 days. It wasn't that long ago in the e-patient white paper that Dave uses where Don Lindbergh, who ran the National Library of Medicine for 30, 40 years, said if I read 2 journal articles every night, I'm 400 years behind. Well, now it's going to get much, much worse. So the question I have is, what do we do with that? I think a future where big data and analytics are part of healthcare, that's happening. The question is, what's that future going to look like? Is it sort of utopian or dystopian? Is it a place where it actually empowers people? Does this knowledge and this data go into the hands of the few? Does it live in silos? Does it benefit a few, or does it go to the hands of the many? Does everyone get to? Does it make it easier, more rewarding, better to be a patient? Does it make it better to be a doctor or a nurse or some other clinician? Or do you become a cog in a machine where you're told what to do by some computer reading to you, or is it a real, more fun process to be in that? Does it help researchers? Does it get the data to researchers, to the drug companies, to folks working in the field? The people that we leave out the most, the minorities, the underserved, are they gonna? Is it gonna leapfrog? Is it gonna benefit everyone else at their expense, or disparities going to be worse because of this, or is it going to be better? So I think we all know what answers we want to that. That's what it is.
Well, now, aren't you glad we put that water?
That water bottle. See, water again. I'm telling you, water is the key to all this today. And aside from this, so I think the solution. Yeah, the solution in the word is we got to democratize this. We got to democratize health together. There's no other choice. Otherwise, things get much worse. So that's our job, because the people in this room will get it. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I almost don't need it. Regina just did an amazing job describing this concept, and that's why I want to leave 5 minutes to give her the last words. I have this YouTube video from 2012 that I'm going to show of one of her many amazing paintings, Chaotic, which again has an ocean in it, and but it's all the different stakeholders that it takes to build a movement around this. So now I'm getting into the learning health community of one of the sort of three different things I'm involved in this space. the community, again, sees the learning health system as a movement. It needs a stakeholder at every point on the compass to make it happen. Because if you leave anyone out, one, it's just inefficient, and they have to build their own thing. But you need data from everyone, knowledge from everyone, and benefit to everyone from what they need. It's enabling learning for everyone. It's all the great ideas we heard today made easier, building like I said, an infrastructure. Right now, everyone's just getting their own bottle of water, reinventing the wheel themselves. We need the water infrastructure for Flint. So that's the movement we're trying to build. We came together in 2012 and really developed a set of core values. By the way, this graphic of the 10 core values was developed by Laura Crawford, Eli Lilly. I have a link there. Again, Lilly has been a huge supporter of this. I'm so glad they're here. So anyway, we had the 10 core values that really bonded this movement together. And fast forward, now 4 years later, we actually have 104. We got another endorsement the other day. We have 104 endorsements of the core values. What's interesting about these endorsers, one is it's, right now, literally I think every invitee to that summit that told me they couldn't be bothered with it has now endorsed. So that's pretty cool, the ones that couldn't be bothered to come. It's companies that compete with one another vigorously, for example, in the pharma industry, Epic and Cerner that compete vigorously with each other. It's in pharma, it's Lilly, Sanofi, and GlaxoSmithKline again that compete. It's stakeholder groups that might distrust one another. Some real amazing patient groups here that might not be trusting some of the others. It's really at every point on the compass we have.